Hello, here I am again on the boat. It is a Sunday morning. Is it still morning? It is just still morning. And again, I find myself with a few hours spare, so I thought I would come along and crack on with a bit more DIY. But first, of course, the question I'm sure that is at the forefront of your mind: has that green food colouring come through to the towel at the back where the leak comes through? Let us find out. Let us be on tenterhooks no more. First impressions are that the towel is not very green. On the other hand, I haven't been here for quite a while, and let's have a look out there. Well, if there was any green stuff I put in that well has long since vanished, either through the crack or into the canal. Okay, hang on. Yes, folks, it's time for another exciting episode of Dave Squeezes Out a Towel. Well, the towel just looks sodden, to be perfectly honest. Ooh! But look here. There's a green stain just in that one bit, which suggests that the green food colouring I put in has come through, even though the rest of the towel is just a bit soggy. Do you know, I don't think that necessarily proves an awful lot. It proves that the water from the, whatever you call that, splash deck is coming through. It doesn't necessarily prove that canal water isn't coming through. However, the other thing was, of course, that this towel was a clean towel. So let us see if the water coming off it is clean or canal water. Because if it's clean, oh, it does look a bit dirty actually. I was going to say, if it's clean, it's from the little splash well. If it's dirty, it's from the canal. Well, there's certainly a tint to that water, which I'd say was greenish, which would suggest that the food colouring has come through, which might indeed suggest that the leak is coming through that splash deck and not the canal. However, the water is not, well, I don't know, it's hard to know, isn't it? Is that dirty canal water or not dirty canal water? I guess what I'll have to do is put the towel back again with no more green ink. Not ink, you know, food colouring. And come back again and see whether the water is clear, because the towel is clean, relatively, or not. It's all just a mystery, really. My plan, I think, for today is to start clearing out this forward cabin, and as I've got nowhere to put the stuff at home, I'll just clear it all out to the back cabin. I'll move the cushions, the table, the miscellany that's in here, just clear it out so that I can start removing all this carpeting. And it's not actually, now I look at it carefully, that the carpeting is bad. It's just that it's a bit dark. I think I'd like a lighter grey colour than this somewhat sombre graphite, I suppose you might call it. But also, it's a little bit, there's wires dangling that I want to pull out and remove. So I think I'm going to take this all down. I hope I'm not going to regret this, like most of my DIY. Let's start with clearing this out. And while I'm here, opinions, actually. This is the table, and it's big and heavy, and it's sort of triangular shaped, and the idea is it acts as an infill for the bed, so you can put this between the V-berth to give you a solid platform to then put the cushions in to make this up into one giant double. But when this is actually up as a table, it goes something like this, and it's huge, and it's wobbly, and it's in the way. And I'm just thinking, maybe I scrap that whole table and just consider, look, this is a day boat, really. It's a day boat with a cabin. It's not something you're ever going to go away for long periods on. It doesn't need to have a double bed. So maybe just forget the whole idea of putting infills here. Get rid of the infills, get rid of the big table, maybe keep the table leg because it's already screwed into the floor of the boat now, but just put a little round table here that you could put a cup of coffee on as something a bit more sensibly sized, and then just have this as a V berth. Or, I'm definitely getting rid of that table, it's too big and clunky. Have a little round table here for coffee and come up with some other mechanism that you can fit between the berths to make it a platform on which to put the infill cushions. But this giant chunky thing is too big, and I think I want shot of it. I also did have originally grand plans for the catering department, suggesting that I was going to put in a big lithium battery and an inverter and everything like I did in my camper van, and make this an induction hob with an electric kettle and so on. It's all very costly, and I just think now that really for the value of the boat, which is relatively little, that might be overkill, and perhaps it's just better to keep it simple. I'm not a fan of having propane on board, but these little, I think they're actually butane cylinders that go in these camping things, they're right, aren't they? So I think my mind is now tending to just keep it simple. Just keep either this stove or a very similar one, because all you're ever going to want to do is make a cup of tea or heat up some soup or something. It doesn't have to be complex. So let's just keep the costs down, keep it simple, a little camping stove. I will remake this area with some more wood and remake these shelves and things, but I think just forget the massive battery thing whole plan. I don't think that's necessary. You know, now I look at it, I don't think that table was right for that anyway. I mean, it's the right shape, but it sticks up considerably over the lip, and it doesn't go quite to the end, and it doesn't go quite to the end here either. I mean, look how much that sticks up. So it clearly wasn't the right table anyway, so I am going to chuck it. This is an odd bit of wood as well. The bit that was underneath where I had the cooktop, because I mean there's a gap at the end, and yes, there were shelves there, but I can't help thinking there should have been something else at the end there, like this should extend all that way, and then you might think, but you need this to be hinged or something. Well, it won't hinge that way because it'll thump into that. It could arguably hinge that way. There still should be a matching bit of wood at that end. I don't know whether to keep this bit or not. It's almost the right shape, and I will want something to put the cooktop on. I might use it as a template, but I suspect I'll end up making one solid plank that goes all the way to the end. I don't think you'll need to lift this. There is the space underneath, which, if you recall, was the weird toilet bowl shaped hole underneath, and if you haven't seen that video, there it is. But if and why's this got two holes in it? What's that all about? If I make another piece that shape and just give that a solid bottom, that could become a cutlery drawer or something, and then maybe put a fridge under there. Now, I was going to put the battery under there, wasn't I? I was going to move it to that side. We'll see how much space the battery takes up. You see, the battery could go, bear with me, there, which is kind of neatly tucked away, and then that would leave that space free for a little fridge. And in terms of the doors on this, lots of people suggesting tambour doors, which I do like the idea of, but of course that would then leave the front, the horrible looking front, exposed, and no matter how much drilling out and epoxy filler I put into those little holes, it's not going to be pretty. So I'd have to come up with also a little fascia for that, which is not impossible. Just a strip of a strip of wood round the edges to make it look pretty, and then a tambour door to slide across. And the rolly thing for the tambour would go in there, and then the battery perhaps behind, bearing in mind I need space for the fuse box and solar controller and so on, but that doesn't take up a lot of space. And then that could be a fridge. That becomes a cutlery drawer. The little cooker goes there. A remade thing of shelves goes there. And over on the other side, sink exactly as it is now, but I will make a new lid for it. And then underneath will be space for a water tank. Let's talk about this ceiling, which is some sort of solid panel, semi-solid panel, wrapped in the carpet. And there are these little pop studs here, which if you pop them off, reveal screw heads underneath. So I'm guessing that between the fiberglass and the carpet there's some sort of batten into which this has been screwed. And if I take all of these out, they're not entirely rusted away. You see, that's not even unscrewing, it's just loose. Let's see if I can just pull that out. Yes, that is a very rusty screw. That's almost no screw at all. So in theory, if I locate all of them, this should come down. I wonder if there's a specific order you have to take these bits off in. I bet there is, because that one overlaps slightly. Oh. Alright, well, we'll just have to see. Bear with me. Alright, I admit I got slightly distracted. I took off that little box that was in the corner of the cabin here that had the switches for the cabin lights and things. There it is, and not meaning any disrespect to the former owner, but that is not a pretty bit of woodwork, sorry, it really isn't. The switches I like, so I'll keep the switch gear, but this was going to have to go. And it has. There we go. One box which is going out, and one quite nice switch panel, although I did slightly break the middle one on the bottom and I've pushed it back together. A little bit of glue will sort that, but that's nice, keeping that. Now this is slightly annoying. I want to get rid of this piece of wood so I can use it as a template for making a new top for the sink, but look, the wires have been brought up through that hole, and I'll have to either make a little incision into the wood in situ or cut the wires. They were obviously brought up and then all these connections made, because they're not going to push back down there now without me cutting them. I may ultimately end up cutting them anyway, because I'm going to move a lot of the wiring, but just on the off chance it stays here, and there's only about that much slack on the wires underneath from the battery bank. So I think I will, I don't know, I cannot pull them through. I'm going to have to make a little incision in the wood, I think, to get that out. On second thoughts, it's just going to be too awkward. I'm going to cut the wires, except for one, which goes up to the control panel behind the steering wheel, and I'll bring that wire up through the hole. I may come to regret this, but with that out the way, I can pull most of those back through. There's one I can then bring up from underneath. So what I've done there is left these wires intact that go up to the control panel behind the steering wheel, but I've simply chopped off the ones that went to the little box. And the result is that this piece is now free, which I shall use as a template. You can see how many holes that's got screwed in it. It's been altered and amended over the years, so we'll make a new one of those. And oh, this is all going to have a bit of a clean up, isn't it? All right, now ladies, possibly gents, try not to get too excited with this shot of my arse, as I'm in the electronics cupboard I've got a little bit carried away because I was only going to take that box out, but in the process of undoing all that wiring and snipping it, I'm now in the electronics cupboard undoing the other ends of it, and by and large taking off lots of little bits of wire that were going up to that thing. And also, look, ages ago when I did the tour, there was a random connector just sitting behind the batteries. It was one of them. So I've taken that out, and that's given me great pleasure. So what I've left here is the solar is still coming in connected to the battery, and the output of the battery is connected to the fuse box, but the fuse box is not really going anywhere. Well, there's the fuse box, and the negatives are going off at that end, and these are the positives here. We've got one positive which disappears into that bit of white pipe and shoots off through the walls somewhere, and then we've got a couple of negatives, one of which disappears off following that path but not through the conduit, one that does go through that conduit, and then there's the main feed off the battery as well. So the question is, what are these doing that disappear off through that hole? The two thicker wires, the red and black, that's the solar coming down. But what these are, I have yet to establish. I realise I said I was going to be taking the carpet off, but now I've taken the electrics off, I want to take this off behind the steering wheel and see what's behind there. So I'm going to do that.